All right, let's bring in our panel on this. We got Richard Brodsky, former New York Assemblyman, senior fellow at Demos, professor at NYU, and a lot more that I can't say on TV. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, and O'Brien Murray, we call him OB, a longtime political consultant and recently managed Bob Turner's race, and he was also named GOP Campaign Manager of the Year. Save your comment there, Richard. Also managed Simca Felder's race for the state Senate, and Andrew, who you've already met. All right. Do you take today, and I don't say cynical in a snide way, but the approach of this is the best they can do, or do you take the approach, you know what, they got something through here, something's better than nothing?
Through. This is nonsense. Let me see if I understand this. The world's greatest deliberative body has agreed to deliberate, and we're celebrating? This is what they're supposed to be.
What do you expect them to do?
What
U.S. Senate have you been watching the last 5 years?
Calm down on the other side there. Just calm down. I'm not finished yet.
Was Albany any better?
Albany was a lot better.
I'm begging you, don't get started.
No. You may not have the votes to pass anything. You may have people who don't like the product, but the notion that we're celebrating because the legislature of the United States of America is actually going to discuss it on the floor of the legislature, that's no reason to celebrate anything.
Well, the reason you're talking about even the word celebration, but the reason you're talking about moving the ball forward is there's now the opportunity for a vote. Remember, weeks ago the question is, will there even be a vote? And I sat here and I said to you, what the president has to do, and he hasn't done it. Why did he go to Newtown last week?
What, are you blaming the president?
Republican
Party is out against everything, and it's the president's fault?
My cousin is Joe Biden's communications director. You know where she spent her New Year's Eve? On the Capitol with the vice president trying to push through the fiscal issues of what was going on at the year-end stuff for the budget. That's where they spent it. Obama needs to put himself out there and take the risks and go forward, and he's not doing it.
But what about the dinner last night that he had with Republican senators? Just last night.
That's great. He started doing that, but he also did it a few weeks ago. It's been years he hasn't done it. He's starting to do it now,
How did
Dominic.
we get into a discussion of Obama's dinner habits when the issue is whether the Republican minority is going to continue to block votes?
I didn't bring it up.
Let's do some math. 68, okay? We all know 60 was the magic number today to get past the filibuster threshold. But does 68 give us any sense when they vote up or down on this that it gets through?
No, I mean, we've already heard from Johnny Isakson, one of the senators who voted to break the filibuster today, that he said, yeah, I voted to have the debate, but I'm voting no on this thing once it finally comes up for debate. And you're going to have a lot of Republicans who didn't want to be boxed in and didn't want to have to go home and explain why they wouldn't allow the debate to happen, who are still going to oppose the thing. Oh, and by the way, all these other things that Senator Blumenthal wants in there, like an assault weapons ban or the extended ammo clip, that ain't getting in there. They don't have the votes for that. And oh, by the way, once it gets through the Senate, it's pretty much dead on arrival in the House. They're just trying to figure out how to kill that baby in the cradle.
You know what, Richard? I hate to admit it, but Richard is 100% correct with his assessment of how he's. Because I don't want to agree with you, but his assessment is correct. All they did today, it is progress. I'll grant you that, but. It's one step forward. No. It's one step forward, and we don't know how this script is going to end.
Let me tell you why here's why I disagree on one thing. You're absolutely right, it's progress. Process too. But if you have an up and down vote, you have to put your name to something. And at the end of the day, I say this all the time, if 90% of Americans want something, which is background checks, and you vote no for it, I know there's districts where you'll get a parade for it. But there's more and more parts of America where that's not a good thing. And I'm not being naive or Pollyannish. I don't remember a issue where 90% of us agreed on anything. So for there to be an up or down vote, in the House too, and then to vote no on this, I believe there's some political consequences. Maybe they're small, but maybe in some other places they're not. I think it's going to be an issue like we saw with gay marriage. I think it's going to be an issue like we'll see with immigration. Not everybody in Washington is up to speed with the American public's on this one. And I think if they can just get an up and down vote here, they may be surprised by the reaction of constituents.
When I was in undergraduate school in Providence, I had a major in the U.S. Army teaching a class to me. And at that time, Al D'Amato was down in Washington doing the old-fashioned filibuster with Grumman. And he said, how can this be done? He's a U.S. senator. And here I am, this undergraduate, talking to a major in the Army. And I said, sir, he is a senator from New York. So all these men and women you're talking about that you think aren't in touch with what's going across the nation, they represent the men and women that are in their districts and in their states. That's who they have to connect to. That's who they go back and answer to. If you go back to what happened with Obamacare over the time that it was out there being debated, The men and women went back to their states, back to their districts, and they had the discussions in the town halls. Remember all the arguments in town halls that went on? All the protests, people canceling town halls? That's going back to your voters and listening to them.
Fair enough. But when we put the polls in the field on health care, it was always 50-50. Maybe a little bit up, maybe a little bit down, but by and large, it was a separated country. And if we debate abortion in this country, the two compelling arguments on this, okay. But in this particular case, on this issue, there's been at least 7 or 8 national polls have been put in the field on background checks. I'm not talking about assault weapons. I'm not talking about, but my only thing is if you vote up or down on this and you vote no, it's not a political winner.
It has a consequence. It's just no big deal that the United States Senate is finally going to allow the crazy Republicans are going to allow a vote.
Okay, but now the vote happens. Isn't there a downside to voting no?
Sure
it depends on what part of the country you're from. All politics,
Richard,
but all politics are local, and there are officials that this will play well by voting no.
I get this. In Park City, Utah, there's going to be a different feeling than there's going to be in the Bronx.
Not just Utah. Richard, when you went up to Albany, how different was it from New York City, Long Island, Westchester, and upstate New York?
Night and day.
Forgive me.
But that goes across the
about
country.
That elected officials are responsible to their constituents. I stipulate to that. The problem here is that 40-odd Republicans have blocked democracy from functioning. Today, hooray, 18 of them, a minority, decided to let the people have a vote.
How many Democrats did the same thing?
I just have
Not
to
like
point out
this.
for clarity. Today's vote doesn't guarantee we'll get a vote. It can still be filibustered later on. It just means the debate starts. So we're not a vote on this isn't carved in stone just yet.
It's a sad commentary.
It really is a sad commentary. No matter where you fall on the issue, it's a sad commentary that after 118 days, I'm doing cartwheels. I'm catching myself here because maybe, just maybe, we can have a vote.
It's democracy. They voted
that's not
today,
democracy.
and they now have a chance to debate the issue on the floor of the Senate.
A majority is democracy.
They have
60 votes ain't
and
democracy.
there's now a debate on the floor of the Senate.
Okay.
And now as they debate it, they'll decide what to do.
We're going to keep this dialogue going. And when we come back from the break, we're going to stay on the subject, but we're going to talk about big picture. The chances that this or other things are passing, and also later we will hear directly from a gun violence victim. We're not talking the politics with her. We're going to talk about her personal experiences, what it was like to be on the receiving end of a bullet. In fact, of a gunfire that actually killed her friend. We'll hear from her as well later on. Stay with us.